Hello, and thank you for tuning back in here to Matrix Breakers. I wanted to come live and talk to you guys a little bit about RFK Jr.'s setup and what he's doing to create kind of like a reinvigorated wellness industry. So I'm seeing there's a technical thing, so I'm just making sure we're good. Got it. So yeah, really exciting stuff is going on. People who don't quite understand the time of history that we're living in, it's very important to recognize that when you look at history, you realize that there are a lot of imperfect people who take leadership in very pivotal moments to then put the collective, if you will, before themselves. And it's funny because in these historical moments, it is individuals who are not necessarily the ones you think would be the righteous ones, right? And the Bible's littered with amazing stories of people who are redeemed, right? They're like, there's a redemption curve in the arc of a character that then makes them this person that is going to lead some kind of movement that's going to make the world better or is going to defeat evil and whatever have you. So whether it's a war that's happening or whether it's a cultural movement or a philosophical movement, or a biblical thing that you're reading in the Bible, there are so many examples of people who are come from a horrible place, a horrible background, could possibly have been people who did really horrible things. And then somehow the redemption arc allows them to grow and expand and lead in a time that is necessary for them, right? You look at Churchill, you look at Teddy Roosevelt, you look at MLK Jr. I mean, he was a womanizer, right? So was JFK, right? So many different historical examples. Abraham Lincoln, some people would call him a tyrant. Some people would say that the actions that he took during the Civil War were actually contrary to what a lot of the Union wanted and a lot of politicians, and even including his own cabinet. And it was very unpopular. Like, for example, the emancipation of all the slaves was something that was extremely controversial. It wasn't necessarily a broad acceptance throughout the entire Union, but Abraham Lincoln did it anyways. So it was really, really difficult when you have people who have imperfections or are people that come from a background that, they had that redemption curve. So I think that when you look at somebody like a Trump, Elon, RFK Jr., these people have redemption curves. They were not necessarily good people back in the day, right? They were, oddballs, have in many cases have done things that are really, scandalous, if you will. Elon is not, innocent at all, right? Trump neither. And then RFK Jr., he had to deal with drugs. He was addicted to, I believe it was heroin for over 15 years, right? And I see that for some reason as an attack on him, as if there is no redemption arc. And I know that because people in society and our culture today, they are always, we have this idea of cancel culture where if somebody says something or did something 10, 15, 20 years ago, you bring it back up into the news cycle in modern day, and then you try to cancel this person, right? Especially when that person is seeking a position of power. And so this is just something that the news media is incredible at. But I do also believe our society and the people, involved with us are super um, keen to blame somebody for something that they did or pin that on them for whatever they did years ago and then make it their entire character. Make it anything and everything that they talk about. Oh, well, you did drugs 10 years ago, and so therefore. It's like, really? Like that's your criticism? Like you're a perfect person, so you're going to tell somebody else who's actually in the fight trying to do something positive that probably has nothing to do with what their past was even like, but you're going to bring that up constantly and criticize because this is the problem with society. People are such gossipers. They love drama. We're so engulfed in drama, and small minds talk about other people and criticize constantly, right? Where I would even say average minds speak about, just occasions or events or things that happened in the past, while large minds, big thinking people are talking about the future, talking about big ideas, right? Changes, big changes, great changes, right? So it's interesting to me that, and this is just the beginning of the podcast, just to discuss this stuff, but it's interesting to me we're witnessing the institutions of power, which is the ideal for them. They are holding the status quo. They are protecting the status quo. And I get it. They're an institution. They're an institution. They're institutions of power in the sense that they've maintained power for such a long time that they want to project the power by keeping the status quo and then threatening that, well, if you do this thing, it's going to destroy all of the wonderful things that we've brought. And while the collective is like, well, you've been doing a poor job on all these, if you were to grade, health and war and foreign affairs and the economy, like there's so many parts of this institutional power that have graded Fs in all of these categories, including education. I can go on. So you're looking at this, okay, these institutions of power are preserving their status quo. Like that's what you see. I don't give a fuck how anybody else wants to complain about it. That is what it is. It is institutions of power projecting the status quo as the ideal situation. When the collective is questioning and saying, no, I think we want to invite change. And yeah, when you change, when you grow, when you work out, right? When you do anything like that, you're going to go through a painful point. And that's what we're experiencing now. I would even say that, we are experiencing a open heart surgery on the country and on the world. The world is in this really unstable time period. And it takes particular characters of history to have their redemption arc and to make their way into power and then to make great change. Happens all of the time. These are cycles of history and we're living through it right now, right? So I just wanted to kind of say that to start the podcast, to really enhance and embody the ideas behind RFK Jr. and what he's doing to expand the wellness industry. Like, let's kind of get into it. So there's some promises. I wanted to kind of go through a list. Something that he's really, really keen on doing is transparency in health policy. So he has pledged to create an era of radical transparency. Where you used to get FOIA requests to try and get studies that were done on a particular food group or a pharmaceutical to find out what research really went into a particular product. Now, what he wants to do is radical transparency. So any product that gets approved by the FDA, for example, or is researched heavily, like a vaccine or another medical either device or supplement or medicine in general, we want to be able to publish all the research that's done, both good and bad, about a particular product. Whereas in the past, which is actually the status quo, we've been dealing with a pharma lobby that's just a cycle of people going in and out of the industry and then back into the FDA and doing approvals and getting paid to do so. That's a big problem. That's a conflict of interest. That's, I would say, not even just a conflict of interest. That's pure corruption. You're getting approvals from a particular agency that your employee or previous employee or future employee is working for. And then it's just a broken system. It's so obvious that anybody who argues for it is either just dumb or corrupt themselves. There's only two options. Anybody who's arguing to keep the status quo right now is either misinformed and dumb, or they are corrupt and they're a part of the corruption. Those are the only two options. So when you see media pundits trying to protect, let's say, for example, vaccines and the vaccine industry, which is a liability released industry where there is no liability, which in simple terms, there's no accountability for anything that they do that's negative, has negative consequences. It's a big fucking problem. So I think with transparency, you're going to see a clear distinction between what we think of as medicine today, or pharmaceuticals even, and other wellness related products, right? So if let's say the FDA, but in general, the Health and Human Services, what RFK Jr. is doing, if his focus is be transparent and they start to also study various different natural remedies to all kinds of particular problems, the way things used to be handled, okay, we can get actual transparency as to the research, right? So instead of demonizing turmeric for inflammation, which, like, I'm sure the government's position on turmeric is probably going to be something negative. I actually should look that up right now. Where, look, what is a an FDA study, or like basically, or a NIH study on turmeric and inflammation? Like, do they even publish these things? So that that radical transparency is going to allow the distinction to be created so that the wellness oriented industry, not the pharmaceutical, gets a like first come first serve, and that's how it should be, right? You should want to handle your issues through doing various wellness practices and taking various natural products before you go to a chemical related product. It's just a very simple thing. Anyone who argues for that either is broken because they are studying medical, they're studying medicine at an institution like a university, and that's their entire model is based off pharmaceuticals because they only study 6 weeks of nutrition to become a doctor, and in some cases they don't study nutrition at all, which is incredible because food is probably 80 to 90% of the problem in your body for chronic illness. Okay, wow. So that's interesting. So you're either corrupt in the sense that you are a corrupted mind. You're a doctor who believes in this falsehood, in this false paradigm that you need pharmaceuticals to cure anything when we already know they only relieve the symptoms. So obvious. And then you lead them to surgery, which is the current medical model today. That's why I laugh when I see people say Medicare for all. What the fuck does that even mean? You want to give a broken system, a broken concept of medicine to everybody else for free, right? So not only is it devalued already because of the fact that it doesn't fucking work, right? The curing this, or the treating the symptoms and then leading to surgery and removing and or replacing a particular failed organ, for example. You're going to take that model and give it for free. That alone is already fucking stupid. Then you double down by giving it for free. You also take the value away from it. So then the people that get involved in that industry, let's just say it's not as lucrative anymore. At least money is some kind of a motivation for pharmaceuticals to actually work, and or surgeries to actually work. So there's at least a lucrative part to it. If you subsidize it heavily by the government, then you're going to get a decrease in value of the actual industry. So that's another big fucking problem. And so I think that protection of the status quo is going to be a significant fight in the mainstream mind of everybody else. And so we will have to uproot a lot of this mindset into medicine, because once we do so, we're going to be able to properly, I believe, integrate a new wellness associated authority in the medicine industry, right? Or just in general, you think of wellness, right? So I think transparency is amazing. I think that's a really good stepping stone. And he wants to combat the chronic disease epidemic. You've seen RFK Jr. talk about this many times. His Make America Healthy Again. Let's read from here. His Make America Healthy Again platform emphasizes preventative measures such as improving diet quality by regulated food additives, reducing the prevalence of ultra-processed foods, and advocating for cleaner, less chemical-laden food products. So again, starting with food when it comes to chronic illness. This approach could significantly reduce the burden of diseases like obesity, diabetes, and heart disease, potentially lowering healthcare costs and improving quality of life. Correct. So if you want to take people and get them healthier, address the food problem, right? And I think that this is a really good part to the wellness industry because there's a lot of amazing supplements that you can take that help with the lack of nutrient density of foods. So I sell some of those as well. And those are great products. I think I think everyone should supplement. I personally supplement every single day. So by supplementing is able to replace some certain food groups that help you out. And I think that this is going to promote other wellness related products. Also, this will encourage farmers and ranchers who do things naturally and organically to start to increase, their profitability. So if on the mainstream big agriculture gets an overhaul, it leaves room for growth for local ranchers and other food oriented, farmers and everything else, for them to come into the marketplace and provide that natural product, right? And it's not about like regulating heavily all of these industrial food items, because I do kind of lean into the idea that, to mass produce enough food for everyone to eat, there is a chemical laden process that is tolerable only because if we didn't have it, there potentially might, the transition is going to take some time. Let me put it that way. The transition is going to take time because you can't just eliminate all processed foods and force all farms to stop using Monsanto, and then also take all the big agriculture and ranching, processes and companies and industries to stop their growth, but because they have to implement these natural remedies into their cycle of business. It's going to be a transition. So we can't immediately halt that because that's where the mass amount of food is produced. So you'd have empty grocery store shelves. So there's a very delicate process. As I mentioned earlier, I feel like America is undergoing a surgery of some kind. That's the best way to explain it. And so, at the end of the day, it's important to recognize that and to know that we are in a very particular time where if you do this too fast, then there will be problems. So again, looking at it from that perspective, you can see how food safety and nutrition are going to be a huge part of this strategy. And if you are if you're right now inside of a wellness oriented space, or you are able to conduct, natural remedies with a product or service today, then you're going to be successful, period. You're going to see a gate open up for you to succeed. Yeah, so holistic and preventative health approaches, by proposing to dedicate more NIH research funding towards preventative, alternative, and holistic health approaches. He aims to broaden the scope of medical research. This could lead to breakthroughs in understanding how lifestyle, environment, and natural remedies can complement traditional medicine, potentially offering new avenues for treating chronic conditions without solely relying on pharmaceutical interventions. Really, really important right now. What I just said earlier is a couple reasons, but I just mentioned the idea that the NIH could maybe study turmeric's effect on inflammation, just giving that an example. If this starts to happen and NIH publishes studies and therefore validates it will grow the industry of wellness. Because of the studies that and the money that government is spending on those studies, you're going to be able to use third-party studies. Using those studies, you're going to be able to create products and services that are going to benefit the American people on a mass scale. The reason why the pharmaceutical industry is so successful right now is because they have a protective clause in that they get all the access to all of the research that's being done by the government. That is a huge benefit. Whereas when you're trying to go create a wellness company, you have to pay out of your own pocket or use investors to create studies, and these studies get very expensive. You have to go out of your own pocket to get those studies to validate your claims that your natural product is good for the body or good for a particular remedy. That fucking blows. If the NIH instead is using government money to fund these studies, then companies can just come out with products, use those studies as validation to their claims, and then sell those products into the marketplace. So that's another great thing that's going to grow the wellness industry. I mean, a lot of people don't really realize that. That is a huge deal. And so enhancing public health infrastructure, I mean, he looks to really, the vision is to include strengthening the public health infrastructure, which could mean better integration and coordination between agencies like the CDC, FDA, and NIH. His approach might involve leveraging these agencies to better tackle public health emergencies, improve vaccine distribution systems, or enhance the response to health crisis with a focus on community health rather than individual treatment. So, yeah, again, just kind of an idea there for all of these agencies to implement new concepts of healing and natural remedies along with these other pharmaceuticals that may be necessary. So it's not deleting one and adding another. It's just how do we combine the two and make it great for everyone? Yeah, empowering health choices, advocacy for informed consent and vaccine administration and broader health decisions could empower individuals with more information, allowing for a personalized health decisions based on thorough, transparent data. This is important because if people knew the side effects of the pharmaceutical drug versus some kind of natural remedy, they're going to choose the natural remedy first. A lot of people, unfortunately, are just uninformed, right? They go into the doctor and the doctor is their authority figure that guides them through this pharmaceutical approach. And then people just accept it willy-nilly, thinking that that is the only thing that's available to them. Because that's how doctors pose it. It's actually fucking fundamentally fucked up. But when you think about it like that, it's powerful because people can then now go through a natural remedies, and doctors hopefully are going to be forced to give people these other alternatives to start on before going into chemical related products and then surgery. So again, giving individuals more information for them to make decisions. Yeah, so that's pretty much all of it that I want to communicate today. I think on my video feed, we're having a hard time just because it's like there's latency there. However, I am definitely looking forward to connecting further on this and getting into it into more detail. So yeah, appreciate you guys tuning in. Have a good one. Peace.